The shocking revelation. The massive Xelarian mothership floated in the dark void of space, its silver surface gleaming under the twin suns of the Alpha Draconis system. Inside the Grand Hall, a human stood, his hands bound in glowing blue cuffs. Drake Carter, a stranded pilot from Earth, was surrounded by towering alien figures, their violet eyes staring at him with a mix of disgust and curiosity. The High Council of Xelaria sat on their golden thrones, their expressions hard and unforgiving. The tension in the chamber was thick, and Drake could feel the weight of 1,000 eyes pressing down on him. His heart pounded. He had no idea why he was here. One moment, he was fixing his ship on a remote asteroid. The next, he was abducted and thrown into a cold alien cell. Then the doors at the far end of the hall slid open with a hiss, and she stepped in. Princess Zira Excel. She was unlike the other Xelarians. Tall and elegant, with silver blue skin that shimmered under the glowing orbs above, she carried herself with grace and power. Her golden armor reflected the light, but her glowing violet eyes were locked onto him with an unreadable intensity. She stepped forward, and in a clear, steady voice, said the words that would change Drake's life forever. "Human, you have impregnated me." The hall erupted in chaos. The High Council members stood up, shouting in their native tongue. Some gasped in horror, others muttered angrily. The guards tightened their grips on their weapons, ready for action. Drake's brain froze. What? His voice echoed through the chamber. Surely this was a joke, a misunderstanding. He had never even touched the princess. "This is impossible," growled Elder Vorzin, the eldest of the High Council. "No human has ever." "It is true," Zyra interrupted, her voice calm but firm. "His DNA has merged with mine. Our species reproduce through energy-based resonance. Something in him triggered a response in me." Drake's mouth opened, then closed. He had no words. None of this made sense. He had been in alien captivity for weeks, but the last time he saw the princess was during an interrogation. They weren't even in the same room for long. How could he? Enough. Vorzin's voice boomed through the chamber. His violet eyes burned with fury. "This human has defiled our sacred ways. He must be executed immediately." Drake's stomach dropped. "Wait, what?" He took a step back, eyes wide. "I didn't do anything. I don't even know how this happened. You can't just kill me." "The laws are clear," said another council member. "A hybrid child has never existed before. It is an abomination." Drake's mind raced. He needed to think fast. "Look, I get it. This is weird for all of us. But killing me won't solve anything. If I really did something, don't I deserve to know how?" Zyra took a deep breath, placing a hand on her stomach. "The child is already growing," she admitted, "faster than normal. My body is changing." For the first time, there was a hint of fear in her voice. "The energy inside me. It's unlike anything we have ever seen." The chamber fell silent. Even the High Council hesitated. "This is not just about me," Jera continued. "This child could be the next step in our evolution, a bridge between two species." Vorzin's eyes narrowed. "Or a threat to everything we stand for." Drake's hands clenched into fists. He had no idea what was happening, but one thing was clear. He was in serious trouble. The guards stepped forward, their weapons humming with deadly energy. "Wait." Zyra moved in front of Drake, spreading her arms. "If you kill him, you may be killing the future of our people." The council members exchanged looks. Elder Vorzin exhaled sharply. "Very well. The human will be held for execution at sunrise. If we determine the child is a danger, both will be terminated." Drake's heart sank. Zyra turned to him, her violet eyes filled with something he couldn't quite read. "I will find a way to stop this." The guards grabbed his arms, dragging him toward the prison chambers. As the doors slammed shut behind him, only one thought burned in Drake's mind. How the hell was he going to get out of this? The impossible child. The walls of Drake's prison cell pulsed with a faint blue glow, the energy field humming like a caged storm. His hands were still bound, the cuffs digging into his skin. He leaned against the cold metal wall, exhaling sharply. Execution at sunrise. He had survived crash landings, alien skirmishes, and deep space anomalies, but now, he was about to be executed for something he didn't even understand. Somehow, he had impregnated an alien princess, without even touching her. His mind replayed Ziara's words. This child is growing, and it is unlike anything we have ever seen. Drake clenched his jaw. What did that even mean? Was it even possible? How could a human and an alien mix like that? Before he could process it further, a soft metallic click echoed through the cell. The door slid open silently. Drake's breath caught in his throat. Standing in the doorway, cloaked in shadows, was Ziara. Her golden armor was gone, replaced by a dark, flowing cloak, the hood barely hiding the glow of her violet eyes. She moved swiftly, almost weightless, like a phantom in the dim light. We need to leave. Now. Drake pushed himself up, still in disbelief. Wait, what? How? There's no time, she cut him off. They've decided to terminate the child before sunrise. And you along with it. His stomach turned cold. So much for waiting to see if it's dangerous. Ziara knelt beside him, placing her fingers over his cuffs. A soft blue energy rippled from her fingertips, and the restraints disintegrated into nothing. Drake rubbed his wrists, staring at her in shock. She exhaled. I don't know why, but ever since the child started forming, my abilities have been changing. Growing stronger. Faster. That's supposed to be a good thing, Drake muttered. Ziara glanced toward the hallway, her expression unreadable. I don't know. But I do know that if we stay here, neither of us will live to find out. She grabbed his wrist, and for the first time, Drake felt something strange. A warm energy pulsed through her touch, not just heat, but something deeper, something that felt like a heartbeat that wasn't his own. It sent a shiver up his spine. Ziara. He hesitated. Are you okay? She closed her eyes for a brief second. The child. It's aware, Drake. I can feel it inside me. And it's watching. Drake felt his pulse quicken. Watching. Before she could respond, a loud alarm blared through the prison block. They had been discovered. Ziara's eyes flashed. Move. She pulled him into the corridor just as the automated defense turrets activated, firing beams of blazing white energy. Drake dived behind a column, panting. Ziara stood in the open, calm, focused. She lifted a hand, and something invisible pulsed outward from her body. The energy blast stopped midair, frozen in place like raindrops trapped in time. Then, with a flick of her wrist, she sent them hurling backward, shattering the turrets in an instant. Drake stared. Okay, he muttered. That's new. Ziara didn't answer. Her breathing was uneven, and a faint glow pulsed beneath her skin. The child is changing me, she whispered, almost to herself. I can feel its power growing, but I don't know how much longer I can control it. Drake swallowed hard. This was getting worse by the second. Before he could say anything, a deep rumbling sound echoed through the halls. Heavy footsteps. Multiple. The Exilarian guards were closing in fast. Ziara turned to Drake, her expression sharp. There's a ship in the docking bay. If we reach it, we can escape. Drake exhaled, shaking his head. Great. Outrunning a death squad while babysitting an unborn god. Ziara narrowed her eyes. Do you ever stop talking? Not when I'm about to die. Drake shot back. She grabbed his wrist and pulled him forward, sprinting down the corridor as the walls flashed red with emergency lights. Behind them, the sound of boots on metal grew louder. Then came the voice. A deep, cold, unmistakable voice. There is no escape, princess. Ziara's footsteps faltered for just a fraction of a second. Drake looked over his shoulder, and his blood ran cold. A tall figure stepped into the corridor behind them, his form outlined in dark armor, his violet eyes burning like dying stars. Commander Kavoris, the deadliest warrior in the Xelarian Empire, the man who had never lost a hunt. And right now, they were his prey. Drake barely had time to curse before Kavoris raised a single hand, and the entire corridor exploded in light. The Great Escape. The world was breaking apart. Drake Carter's ears rang as he lay sprawled across the cold metal floor, his vision blurred. The last thing he remembered was Kavoris' hand rising, power crackling in his palm. Then, everything shattered. Now, the corridor was filled with floating debris, chunks of metal, shattered glass, flickering energy barriers hanging in midair like frozen lightning. Time itself felt distorted. Drake groaned, forcing himself up. Ziara stood in the center of the storm, her body pulsing with golden energy. Her hands trembled, her violet eyes burning like twin suns. She had done this. Kavoris, the ruthless Xelarian commander, was suspended in the air, trapped in an invisible force field. His dark armor cracked under the strain of the energy pressing against him. "You!" His voice was a low growl, full of disbelief. "What have you done?" Ziara's chest rose and fell rapidly, her body barely holding together. Sweat dripped from her brow, but her voice was steady. "You will not touch him. You will not take my child." Drake's breath caught. The child was protecting them. Kavoris' lips curled in a snarl. Then, a crackling burst of energy erupted from his body. The force sent Ziara flying backward. The floating debris instantly crashed down as time resumed. Drake didn't think. He moved. He lunged toward Ziara as she collapsed, grabbing her before she hit the floor. Her body felt like it was burning from the inside out. "Ziara, stay with me." Her lips parted, but no words came out. Her body trembled violently. Kavoris was already recovering. Drake looked up, just in time to see the commander charging straight at them. No time. Drake grabbed Ziara and ran. A desperate escape. The alarms screamed through the Xelarian mothership, pulsing with red light as automated turrets descended from the ceiling. Intruders detected. Activating defense measures. Drake cursed under his breath. He barely had Ziara's weight balanced on his shoulder, and now they had to deal with death machines too. He heard heavy footsteps behind him. Kavoris was closing in. Drake's mind raced. He was a pilot, not a soldier. But there was one thing he knew. When a fight was unwinnable, you don't fight. You run. And the only way out. The docking bay. Gunfire and gravity fails. Drake rounded a corner just as the turrets fired. Energy beams sizzling past him. One shot nearly clipped his shoulder, but he threw himself behind a cargo crate, pulling Ziara down with him. She was still shaking, her breath shallow. Drake gritted his teeth. "Come on, princess. Stay with me." She blinked slowly, her eyes struggling to focus on him. "Drake." "Yeah. Run faster." Drake snorted, despite the panic in his chest. "Working on it." He peeked over the crate. Too many guards were swarming the corridor, weapons raised. Then, boom. The ship lurched violently, sending crates and equipment tumbling. Drake barely kept his balance. Ziara grabbed his arm, her eyes sharp again. "They're destabilizing the gravity. We have to move." Drake nodded, and without thinking, yanked a pulse grenade from a fallen guard's belt. "Cover your ears." He tossed it forward. Blast. The explosion sent guards flying. Not waiting for the smoke to clear, he hauled Ziara up and sprinted toward the docking bay. The final barrier. The docking bay doors were sealed shut, the massive airlock flashing red. Drake slammed his hand against the control panel. "Come on, come on." Access denied. The ship's AI responded coldly. Drake clenched his jaw. "I hate this ship." Behind them, Kavoris stepped through the smoke, eyes glowing with deadly rage. "You cannot run from me, human." Drake turned, heart pounding. They were out of time. Then, Zara raised a trembling hand. The air crackled. And suddenly, the entire docking bay shook violently. The doors ripped apart. Beyond them, Drake saw the small Solarian scout ship, engines primed and ready. Their escape. "That's our ride," Drake whispered. But Zara was collapsing. The energy burst had drained her completely. Drake caught her before she hit the ground. And then, Cavorus lunged. Drake only had a split second to react. He threw Zara into the ship, turned, and met Cavorus head-on. The impact knocked the air from his lungs. Cavorus grabbed him by the throat, lifting him like he weighed nothing. "You are unworthy of this power," Cavorus snarled. "I will end you." Zara's voice cut through the chaos. "No." Drake saw a flash of light, and suddenly, Cavorus was gone. For a heartbeat, there was only silence. Then, a distant explosion and a flashing red warning on the control panel. "Emergency evacuation activated." Drake coughed, stumbling back into the cockpit. What the hell just happened? Zara's breathing was ragged, her body trembling, but her voice was calm. "I teleported him into deep space." Drake stared at her. "You what?" But there was no time to celebrate. The entire mothership was now in pursuit. And ahead of them, a massive asteroid field. Drake took the pilot's seat, gripping the controls. "Buckle up, princess. We're not out of this yet." The engines roared to life. The scout ship blasted off, straight into the storm of rocks and fire, pursued across the galaxy. The small Solarian scout ship hurtled through the asteroid field, twisting and dodging between massive floating rocks. Each turn was a gamble. One wrong move, and they would be reduced to space dust. Drake Carter gripped the controls, his knuckles white. He wasn't just flying. He was surviving. The Solarian war fleet was right behind them. Their mothership loomed in the distance, its sleek silver hull glowing with alien symbols. Squadrons of hunter ships poured out like angry hornets, weapons locking onto them. Drake muttered under his breath, "I swear, every time I try to take a breath, someone wants me dead." Beside him, Princess Zara was barely conscious, her body curled in the co-pilot's seat. Her breathing was ragged, her silver-blue skin glowing faintly under the dim cockpit lights. "The child," she whispered. Drake's gaze flickered to her. "Zara, talk to me. What's happening?" She clutched her stomach, wincing. "It's awake, and it's changing me." Drake's stomach turned. He had no idea what that meant, but he knew one thing. If she passed out now, he'd be completely alone against an entire fleet of pissed-off aliens. And his luck? Not great. Before he could ask more, the ship's warning system blared. Incoming fire. Drake's reflexes kicked in. He yanked the controls, tilting the ship into a sharp dive. A second later, a blast of blue plasma tore through space where they had just been. "Great," Drake muttered. "We're totally winning." Zara's eyes flickered open. Her pupils were glowing gold. "The fleet. They won't stop." Her voice was faint but certain. "They'll hunt us to the edge of the galaxy." Drake exhaled sharply. "Then we better make sure they can't follow us." An impossible maneuver. Drake scanned the nav screen, searching for an escape route. The asteroid field was dense, but not impossible. "Hold on," he muttered. He pulled the ship upward at full speed, heading straight for a spinning mass of debris. Huge asteroids clashed against each other, breaking into smaller fragments. Zara's eyes widened. "Drake, what are you?" "Surviving." The ship plunged into the chaos. Behind them, the Solarian fleet hesitated for just a second, and that second was all Drake needed. He twisted the ship through gaps that barely existed, dodging chunks of rock the size of skyscrapers. Alarms blared as the metal hull scraped against an asteroid, sparks flying. Ziara sucked in a breath, gripping the seat. "You're insane." Drake grinned. "Yeah, but it's working." Behind them, several hunter ships weren't so lucky. One clipped an asteroid and exploded on impact. Another tried to follow, but got caught in a chain collision of debris. Drake whooped. "That's what you get for chasing me." But then, the mothership fired. A massive energy surge cut through the asteroid field, obliterating everything in its path. Drake's heart stopped. There was no way out. Then, Ziara gasped. The ship's holographic controls flickered as energy rippled through her body. Drake turned to her. "Ziara, what are you doing?" Her glowing hands hovered over the console. "The child. It knows another way." Before Drake could react, the ship's engines flared with golden light. And then, they disappeared, lost in the unknown. When Drake opened his eyes, his body felt strange, weightless, like he had fallen between realities. The ship was floating in a place he didn't recognize. No stars, no planets, just an endless sea of swirling golden mist. Drake's heart pounded. "Where the hell are we?" Ziara exhaled shakily. "The child moved us." Drake swallowed. "Moved us where?" Ziara shook her head. "I don't know." For the first time, she looked afraid. And then, something moved outside the ship. A shadow. Massive. Unnatural. Watching. Drake's breath caught. They weren't alone. Cliffhanger for Part 5. The Child Awakens. Ziara suddenly doubled over in pain, gasping. Drake grabbed her. "Ziara, talk to me." Her eyes snapped open, glowing brighter than ever. And then, a voice, not hers, spoke in the cockpit. "You have awakened me." Drake's blood ran ice cold. The child was no longer just growing. It was here. The child awakens. Something was watching. Drake Carter's breath came fast and shallow. His fingers clenched around the ship's co-pilot seat, but it didn't feel real anymore. The Exilarian scout ship was floating in a void of shifting gold mist. No stars, no planets, nothing but an endless, pulsing glow. And then there was the shadow. It moved slowly outside the ship, a massive, dark figure. It wasn't shaped like any ship Drake had ever seen. It didn't even move like something mechanical. It glided, bending the mist around it. But the real horror, it was looking at them. And then Ziara gasped. Her body arched violently, and golden light poured from her eyes. Drake's stomach twisted. "Ziara." She didn't respond. Her hands trembled, her fingers digging into the armrests as though she were fighting something inside her own mind. Then the ship spoke, or at least something inside the ship did. "You have awakened me." Drake's body went rigid. That wasn't Ziara's voice. It wasn't the ship's eye. It was something else. A chill ran down his spine as the golden mist thickened, swirling faster outside. Ziara exhaled sharply, her body relaxing slightly. But when she turned to Drake, her eyes were no longer just violet. They were gold. You hear it too," Drake whispered. Ziara's voice was distant. "It's not a voice, Drake. It's something bigger." Drake swallowed. "That's not comforting." The golden mist shifted, parting like a curtain, revealing something massive in the distance. A colossal structure floated in the void. It wasn't a planet. It wasn't a station. It was alive. And it was calling them. The silent summoning. Ziara gripped her stomach, her breathing unsteady. The child. It knows this place. Drake kept his hands firm on the controls, not daring to move the ship. "Okay, just to be clear, are we talking about our child, or the terrifying, mist-covered nightmare out there?" Ziara closed her eyes, listening. "They're the same." Drake froze. The ship suddenly lurched forward on its own. I didn't do that," Drake muttered. Ziara's glowing eyes locked onto his. "Neither did I." Drake's pulse spiked. "Oh, great. We're just being pulled toward the cosmic horror dimension with no control." Love this plan. He yanked at the controls, trying to regain manual override. Nothing. The ship was being drawn in, deeper and deeper. The shadow outside started moving faster. Then, something knocked against the hull. Drake jumped, spinning toward the sensors. Something was climbing on the ship. The energy readings went wild. The thing, whatever it was not fully in this reality. Ziara clutched his wrist, her eyes glowing brighter. Drake, it's coming inside. The lights flickered. Drake grabbed a plasma pistol. Yeah. Well, I said we give it a warm welcome. Then, a whisper filled the cockpit. Not through the speakers. Inside their minds. I am becoming. Drake's heart pounded against his ribs. Ziara gasped. It's not just talking to us, Drake. It's inside us. The golden mist outside pushed through the cracks in the ship, seeping in like liquid light. And then, the air shimmered. A shape materialized in front of them. A figure. Not human. Not Silurian. Something in between. Tall. Glowing. Formless, yet real. And its eyes, golden, ancient, filled with something beyond time itself, stared straight at them. Drake barely managed to whisper, "What are you?" The figure smiled, and the ship vanished from reality. Cliffhanger for Part 6, the final battle. Drake opened his eyes. He was not in the ship anymore. He was standing on a strange world, the ground shimmering beneath his feet, the sky pulsing with an impossible color. And standing before him was himself. But not quite. The figure that looked like him smiled. "You are not ready." Drake's blood ran cold. Ziara's voice echoed in his mind. "Drake, the child is rewriting reality." The final battle. Drake Carter was no longer in the universe he knew. He stood on an alien world that pulsed with golden light, the ground beneath his feet shifting like liquid glass. The sky above wasn't a sky at all. It was a swirling storm of memories, futures, and something beyond time itself. And standing across from him was himself. But it wasn't just him. The figure that looked like him was taller, stronger, its eyes burning gold, its presence impossibly heavy, like it had lived 1,000 lifetimes. It smiled. "You are not ready." Drake swallowed hard. His hand hovered near his plasma pistol, but deep down, he knew that wouldn't help. "Okay," he muttered. "That's definitely something a cosmic horror would say." The golden version of himself tilted its head. "I am not horror. I am evolution." Drake narrowed his eyes. "Yeah? Well, I didn't exactly sign up for an upgrade." The golden figure stepped closer. "You do not understand, Drake Carter. This is not about you. It never was." It raised a hand. And suddenly, Drake's mind exploded. Visions of a future that shouldn't exist. Flashes of light. Fire. War. He saw Earth burning in a war it had never fought. He saw Exiluria crumbling under the weight of something monstrous. He saw himself, older, battle-scarred, standing in the wreckage of 1,000 civilizations. And he saw Ziara, holding a child who was no longer a child. A being of pure energy, neither Silurian nor human. Something beyond both. And then, a voice. "They will fear what they do not understand. They will try to destroy it. And you will have to choose. Protect the future, or destroy it." Drake's mind snapped back into the present. He gasped, stumbling back, his heart hammering. What the hell was that? The golden figure, his future self, studied him. That was what comes next. Drake clenched his fists. Screw that. The future isn't set in stone. The figure's smile faded. "No, but you must fight for the right one." Then, everything shattered. The real world, under attack. Drake's eyes snapped open, and he was back in the ship. Alarms were screaming. Ziara was beside him, breathing heavily, her entire body glowing with golden veins. She looked at him, and for the first time, He saw real fear in her eyes. "Drake," she whispered, "they found us." The cockpit window was filled with a sight straight out of a nightmare. The Xelarian war fleet was here. But it wasn't just them. Another force had arrived, one Drake had never seen before. Black, angular ships, pulsing with crimson energy, unlike anything in Xelarian design. A third faction. Ziara's voice trembled. "Drake, those ships. They're not Xelarian." Drake's stomach twisted. "Then who the hell are they?" The ship's AI crackled to life. "Warning. Unidentified, hostile force DTTTD." Then, the first shot was fired. A battle on two fronts. The sky erupted in war. The Xelarians and the unknown fleet clashed, energy beams ripping through the darkness of space. Drake grabbed the ship's controls, pulling hard. "I don't know who these new guys are, but I'm guessing they're not here to throw us a welcome party." Ziara's breathing was ragged. "We're outnumbered, outgunned." "We." She suddenly winced, gripping her stomach. Drake looked at her, alarmed. "Ziara." Her eyes snapped open, gold burning through violet. And then, every ship on the battlefield halted. The child chooses its side. The Xelarian fleet, the unknown warships, even Drake's own scout ship. Everything froze in space. Ziara's body lifted from her seat, glowing with a power that Drake couldn't even comprehend. "The child," she whispered, "is making its choice." A deep hum filled the ship, growing louder and louder, until Drake thought his bones might break from the force of it. And then, a voice echoed through every ship in the fleet. "This war ends now." The golden light exploded outward. Ships were thrown back like leaves in a hurricane. And when the light faded, half the battlefield was simply gone. Not destroyed. Erased. As if they had never existed. Drake gripped the dashboard, his heart racing. What had they just unleashed? The future of two worlds. The universe had just changed forever. Drake Carter's hands were tight on the controls, but the battle was already over. The battlefield was eerily silent, as if the fabric of space itself had been stunned into submission. The Xelarian war fleet was retreating. The unknown black ships had vanished, not destroyed, not fleeing, but erased from existence. And sitting in the co-pilot's seat, Princess Ziara XL was no longer just a princess. She was something more. Something new. Her eyes were no longer just violet. Flecks of gold swirled within them, like the dying light of stars trapped in motion. She held her stomach, her breathing shallow. And then, in the silence, the child spoke. Not in words, not in thought, but in a way that shook the very essence of existence. Drake heard it, Ziara heard it. Every being in the galaxy heard it. I am Bjorn. The whole galaxy was watching. Across countless worlds, from Earth's high-tech metropolises to the hive cities of the Xelarian Empire, beings stopped and looked to the skies. Something had shifted. A presence had emerged. Not human, not Xelarian, but something beyond them both. And now, it was awake. The Xelarian High Council, who had once ordered Ziara's execution, now stood in silence, watching the golden energy ripple across their star maps. The warlords of other alien empires, some friendly, some hostile, felt the disturbance. They had been watching the battle from afar, and now they all knew one thing. Something had changed the very structure of the galaxy. On the run, but not alone. Back on the scout ship, Drake exhaled sharply. Okay. So we just wiped out an entire fleet, and now every alien in the universe is gonna want to either kill us or worship us. Awesome. Ziara didn't answer. She was staring into the infinite blackness of space, her expression unreadable. Drake studied her carefully. Ziara, you okay? Her fingers curled into fists. I feel different. Drake hesitated. Different how? Ziara slowly looked at him, her gold-flecked eyes unreadable. The child isn't just a baby anymore, Drake. It's a being of pure energy. It doesn't just exist in the present. It exists in all possible futures. Drake's stomach twisted. You're telling me we got a time-warping space god inside you? Ziara swallowed hard. No, I'm telling you. It's looking for the right future to shape. Drake rubbed a hand down his face. Yeah, nope, that's not terrifying at all. Before Ziara could respond, the ship's holo console beeped. Incoming transmission. Drake and Ziara exchanged a glance. Slowly, Drake pressed the button. A hologram flickered to life, but it wasn't Silurian. It was a human. An old man with grizzled gray hair and sharp blue eyes, wearing the insignia of the Terran Space Court. Drake's pulse spiked. He knew that face. Admiral Jonas Fell. A war hero. A legend. And a man who only showed up when something was truly galaxy-shattering. The Admiral's expression was grim. Carter. Princess. He exhaled slowly. I don't think you realize what just happened out there. Drake forced a smirk. Oh, I don't know. Just a normal Tuesday. Fighting space royalty. Accidentally making an intergalactic god baby. Rewriting reality. You know, the usual. The Admiral didn't smile. You don't understand, son, Vel said. What you just did, it wasn't just a battle. It wasn't just survival. His blue eyes locked onto them both. You just started a new era. And now, the whole galaxy is coming for you. The last choice. Drake exhaled. So what do we do? The Admiral's hologram leaned forward. You have two choices, Carter. 1. You come with us. The Terran Republic. We keep you hidden, protected, until we figure out what this child is and how to control it. Drake's jaw tightened. He already knew he didn't like option 1. Admiral Vel's expression darkened. Or 2. You run. And you keep running. Because once the Xilarians realize the full scope of what just happened, they won't stop. And the other species, they'll either want to study the child, kill it, or worse. Ziara spoke before Drake could. They'll try to worship it. Silence filled the cockpit. Drake ran a hand through his hair. Right. No pressure. Admiral Vel's voice was firm. Decide fast, Carter. Because whatever that child is, it might be the key to everything. And everyone's gonna want a piece of it. Drake glanced at Ziara. She looked at him, the weight of the galaxy behind her eyes. And then she did something unexpected. She reached out and took his hand. Drake felt something pulse between them, something warm and infinite. It wasn't just Ziara anymore. It was the child. And it wasn't just awake, it was watching, waiting, ready. Ziara exhaled. We can't hide, Drake, and we can't let them control us. Drake nodded slowly. Then he turned back to the Admiral. And he made his choice. We don't run, we fight. Epilogue. A new legend begins. Somewhere, deep in the void of space, an unknown alien warlord stood before a massive, glowing screen. They had seen the battle. They had seen the power of the child. And they knew what it meant. A slow, dark smile spread across the warlord's face. So, the new age begins, and humanity thinks it is ready. The warlord turned. Behind them, a fleet of impossible size drifted silently in the void. Let's see if they survive it.